Welcome back, everyone. I thought it would be fun to go through my Ruger Mark series of pistols all in one group. I've been collecting these pistols longer than any other, mostly because well, my father had a very early Mark I, or rather Ruger Standard. We'll get into that a little bit. I got my notes here, and was going to break this up into several episodes, but I think we'll do them all in one shot, and so it might turn out to be a little longer video, but let's get through these. Hopefully I won't make too many mistakes of my notes here, but let's give it a try. This is the we'll start with the early guns, the Ruger Standards. This was my father's gun, actually. This is a good firearm I learned to shoot on. Fantastic firearms because of the all-metal construction that I really like. The Mark I's actually had two series. We're going to have a little noise with my heater, another cold day. They started production in 1949, continued production until 1982 with these first series. We generally refer to them all as Mark I's, but the designation actually is Ruger Standard, and the target versions of these were the Mark I's. But there were also two grip frames during this time period. In 1971, they changed the grip frame to the A100 grip frame. Though this is a A54 grip frame, 9-round magazine, and the A100 grip frame held 10 rounds. And yet, these also have unique magazines. The loading knob was actually transferred to the other side on some of these. The mags are not interchangeable, but the A100 mags will work in these. You have to swap the button to the opposite side, but they are universal in that sense. But the early magazines will not fit. They did not have a reversible button on them. So this is a very early firearm. It was actually made the same year that they changed from the Red Hawk to the Black Hawk, the Morning Hawk, or the Morning Eagle, or Phoenix, if you so desire. This is one of the very last of the actual Red Hawks made. Produced. This one was made in September of 1951. I have a letter from Ruger verifying all of that. But this was my father's firearm that he purchased way before I was born, 1951, and was the firearm I learned to shoot on. So as you can see, no slide stop, a heel magazine release, and the 4 3/4 inch barrel. In November, this was made in September. In November is when they swapped out to the Black Morning Eagle, and I actually have another Mark I here, the heavy taper. This is actually a Mark I, because it is the target. You can see possibly that it does have the Mark I designation on it right here because of the target, and this is the heavy taper barrel. Actually, don't see the end. You can see the difference in the sights, the target sights on it. You can see the Black Eagle on it now. This one was made in 1965. This particular Mark I, it is a true Mark I, and you can see the medallion is on the same side, but it was changed to black, and this is still the early grip frame. This firearm's in extremely nice condition for its age. Had a few rounds through it. Then another Mark I that I have. It's also actually considered a standard. Now you can see on this one the medallion has changed sides. This was 1971. This is the new grip frame. We still have the release on the heel, but the magazines will not interchange from the early guns to the later guns. There's the medallion. You can still see it's not a Red Hawk, has the black background, it's a silver. Now this firearm happens to be an unfired example from 1977, brand new in the box when I found it at auction for a dirt cheap price. Got lucky on this one. It wasn't stored super well, ended up with a little bit of water getting on the box and has a bit of discoloration and erosion on the metal right here. Other than that, it is a completely new and unfired firearm. The 6-inch barrel, and rather than the 4 3/4, you can see it's a slightly longer barrel. But this is still considered a standard, even though it's quite late in the production date. As I said, 1977. So these are among my favorite. People do complain about the takedown on these, but once you learn the tricks, I really don't see that being that big of an issue. Having owned so many of them, these are not intimidating to me to take down at all. It's just a matter of having the hammer in the right position and a little bit of practice, and it'll get easier. The Mark IIs, we're going to move on to my Mark II versions. The Mark IIs added a slide stop and a few frame differences. You can see they now have cutouts. If we bring in the standard one, there's no cutouts here. We have cutouts in the frame here, and we also have a slide stop. I really think the Mark IIs, this is my well-used Mark II from 1996 is when this one was produced. The Mark IIs were from 1982 to 2004. But you can, the magazine again, you see we still have the Silver Eagle, but the magazine again is unique in that it had to actuate this slide stop. Again, they're reversible and can be used in the earlier guns. This is my stainless version of a Mark II. This is a 5 1/4 inch. This one was 6 7/8. But this is my 5 1/4 inch. Again, the medallion on the right side. This one was produced in 1988. This 5 1/2 inch Mark II. Again, it has a slide stop on it. Still have the heel release. We do have a slide stop on it. And again, we have the target sights. But these were all marked Mark II on the firearms. Then after the Mark IIs, along came the Mark IIIs. Well, the Mark IIIs, in my opinion, one of the worst series of all the Marks. Now, the Mark III I have happens to be a 2245. Basically, the uppers are the same, but the lowers, of course, on the 2245s are somewhat different. With the Mark IIIs, we went from the heel lock to the slide release on the frame, but also the Mark IIIs had so many problems, in my opinion. The takedown was made more complex with the addition of a safety in the magazine, so we have a magazine disconnect. We also have a loaded chamber indicator, and of course, again, the release was moved from the heel to the frame. That's a good thing, very good thing. But it made the complexity of taking down the firearm just a bit more complicated, because you have to insert the mag, because you have to have your hammer back and forth in different positions as you take them down and reassemble them. Now, the loaded chamber indicator on this one does show that it is loaded. It is not. This is a snap cap. I keep snap caps on all my 22s. Even though the Rugers you can pull the trigger on with an empty chamber, I prefer to keep snap caps in them, just in case, to make their life a little bit longer. But with the added complexity of these just didn't function as well. The magazines will not drop free, particularly on the 2245s with this little notch cut out back here. My hand, as I'm gripping these, will actually hold it in. So this is my only Mark III I own, just for nostalgia's sake more than anything, because I don't care for the Mark IIIs at all. With too many safety additions, too many complexities that don't need to be there. They don't operate as smoothly. The hammer doesn't fall as easily, even though during disassembly and reassembly. So it makes it a little more difficult, because you have to move it back and forth a couple of times to get it to assemble or disassemble. You notice also this does not have replaceable grips on it. We've lost our grip screws on this particular 2245. All up until then we had grip screws. The newer, we'll just slide right into the Mark IVs. A much improved, vastly different firearm. But now, of course, we have the simple push button takedown. But we also have replaceable grips. You can see I've got walnut ones on this particular Mark IV 2245. Again, it's a 2245. You can see the back cutout is gone now, so it makes it somewhat simpler for the magazine to drop free. The function's much better. No loaded chamber indicator anymore. You can see the safeties have moved to a much more substantial safety. We also, on the 2245, changed our mag release to a much better system. Rather than the little button, we have a nice platform to use. The Mark IVs are vastly superior to the other Mark series if takedown is a concern for you. To me, that's not that big of a concern. As I said, I've done so many of these. They did have a Mark IV standard version. This is an anniversary edition. As you can see, it has the 70th anniversary logo on the firearm. Hopefully you can see that in there against the glare. Originally would have had the black plastic grips, much the same as the original. I've heard a lot of people tell me, well, my firearm has a red hawk on it. No, it doesn't. It has a red background. They still do not make a Ruger Red Hawk. The Mark III's ceased production in 2004 to 2016, and that's when the Mark IV came out, which is the current firearm. I have several Mark IVs just because they're wonderful firearms, especially if the takedown is a concern for you. This was my first Mark IV I purchased here, and I've done other videos on those. They do showing the interchangeability of the barrels. This is the this long-barreled stainless version called the Competition. As I said, was my first firearm. I replaced the grips on this. I didn't care for the thumb grip, the thumb shelf on these. You can see it's marked Competition, and it's also marked Ruger Mark IV on it. Again, it's not a Red Hawk, it's a red background, but it's got the silver on it. And the last Mark IV I have is this. This was a special edition. Again, I put the Ruger wood grips on it. This was a Big Rock edition with the threaded barrel. It came originally with a flash hider on it. Kind of a funny, unique firearm. But this is a blued target version. Again, Big Rock commissioned these. It's a nice little heavy barrel, one of my favorites, actually. Now, if I had to pick one of these Ruger series to be my absolute favorite, I think we're going to have to go back to the Mark IIs and even the Mark I's, especially these longer barreled. They just balance nice for me. Some of my favorite firearms are these. Comparatively, if I had to choose my favorite 22 from this era, though, it would be have a Colt Woodsman, which finish-wise and it just outshines the Rugers. But the Rugers at one time were inexpensive. Some of these firearms can be still got, even my unfired version, very inexpensive. If you look for them, auctions and if you just generally want to collect them, it's a good way to go to find. Some of these old guns generally going to be under $300 for the most part. So there's a kind of a quick look at some of my Ruger Mark series. One other difference I didn't point out in the early guns was they moved the grip screws around a little bit from the two grip frames. That was one other difference on the early grip frames to the later grip frames. So there's subtle little ways you can tell the grip frames apart, but that is one way on the early firearms to the late firearms, is how they moved the grip screws around a little bit from the early to the late. You can see this has got a low mounted, and low here, high here, and low here. So anyway, there we go. There's a quick view of all of my Ruger Mark series. If you'd like to see some of these a little closer up and a little bit more organized here, it's kind of overwhelming with so many. Just let me know, and we'll take a closer look at some of these wonderful working man's firearms. Of course, now they're quite expensive. Some of them ranging up into the $600 price range. You might as well almost buy a old Colt Woodsman compared to that. However, takedown on one of those is very intimidating. Not at all as easy as even an early standard series. So there we go. If we have more questions, just let me know. We'll take a closer look at some of these firearms and go from there. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.